Hello, my name's Bob Bruzek. I was a United States Navy Seabee during the wartime, Vietnam wartime, through 66 through 1968. I started out life on the south side of Chicago, 79th and Ashland. I went to Cook School, the grade school there. Went up through till I was 13 in 7th grade. My parents moved to Berwyn. I did my last year of grade school in Berwyn. I went to J. Sterling Morton High School in Cicero, Illinois, which was just adjacent. Went through 4 years of high school. Was an average student. I wasn't really top-notch on anything, but Morton High School had something unusual for the juniors and the seniors. They had shop classes for people who probably would rather work with their hands as opposed to going on to college and having a different path in life. They had classes in auto theory, electric theory, carpentry shops, how to weld and stuff like that, and you had 4 separate semesters in the last 2 years. My favorite one was electricity, which I really liked. My father had been an electrician, a union electrician in Chicago. So he eventually got me into the apprenticeship class, which is what you were able to do very easily back in those days. You didn't have aptitude or attitude tests to get into any one of the unions. I enjoyed it. I went through 4 years of electrical theory, of which the last year was electronics, which after I had passed the class in my apprenticeship, I had never had the chance to use the electronics at all, but I was strictly, construction was fine. It was something I could do. It was something that I could do with my hands. I went a year and a half of being a journeyman electrician, and when I had my draft card, when I got my draft card, I was A1 because I was physically able, to be, and it was always on the back of my mind. The call up for the Vietnam veteran for the Vietnam War was they were calling thousands of men into the service, drafting them. I figured I was going to do this my own way, so I went down to the recruiter in Berwyn. I think I went around lunchtime, and there was only one recruiter in there for the Navy. There was the other 3 gentlemen were probably out to lunch at the time, and it was probably the luckiest thing I ever had was just to walk up to that chief petty officer and say, "What have you got?" And he says, "You look like you're a little bit older than what we usually have. We usually get guys right at 19. He says, "I see you're 24. I said, "Well, I went through an electrical program, electrician's program through the union." And he looked at me, and his eyes, I remember his eyes bulged out. He says, "Boy," he says, "if I got something for you." He says, "The United States Navy is in dire need of construction guys in the service." He says, "How many years have you got in?" I says, "I've got 5 years in total." He says, "Their program is if you had 3 to 5 years in, you can get in as an E4, which is like getting in as a staff sergeant, I got in as E5 because I had 5+ year of being a foreman. So, the one thing that they tell you once you're in the service, once you go through your basic training and everything, they kind of suggest you don't tell any of the other service guys how you got in because they'd beat you up. It would take them 3.5 years for them to reach what you got just walking into the service. I did my basic training at Quonset Point, Rhode Island. Went to California. We went through the Marines weapons training before, so we also had to know exactly how to use all of the weapons: shotguns, rifles, AR-15s, AR-16s, grenade launchers, the whole works. Because if we got into a point there overseas, we had to know how to fight our way out. So I spent a year in Vietnam in Phu-Bai, up north, which is just I'd say about 10-15 miles away from the city of Hue, which was the imperial city for Vietnam. It was a beautiful city. When you saw it, the shame of it is I went back to see it after the Tet invasion, We almost had to bomb it into rubble just to get control of it back. And when you see the amount of damage that was done, and the lives that were lost, and that was a shame. So with Vietnam, it's not something that I think of all the time, but the two times that it bothers me a little bit is when I hear helicopters going over my house in Mount Prospect, like going to the hospital, to the hospital on Central, and it puts you right back there. When you hear the rotors going, whoomp, 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 you could close your eyes and you put yourself right back there. The other time that it bothers me is when I'm at like a 4th of July at the nearby park, and they've got all the explosions at nighttime and everything, and you close your eyes and you hear all that rapid shooting, and you think, my God, that sounds exactly like, you hurry up and you open your eyes again, because you can't believe that it's been 50 some odd years and stuff like that stays with you. It just will not go away, When I got there, I found out that we're going to be running 750 kW generators, which are huge. They're housed in semi-trailers, but semi-trailers without wheels. They're just on skids. It takes 2 cranes to lift one up. We had 4 of them in an H pattern. We had one that was running all the time. We had one that was being PM'd, preventive maintenance. We had one on standby running, just in case one got hit by a rocket or something like that, that the power could shift automatically right to the other one. And we had a 4th one that we were just sweeping the sand out of. We had to change filters on these every day. The upkeep was something. The heat of the day, I mean, you walked inside these things to check all the measurements and all the readings of how they're going, how they're running. It was hot there. We also went through the monsoon seasons, one of them, which was bad enough. The sand and the dirt is like about 6 inches deep. It's not pure dirt. You kick it up, it goes up into the air, and it takes a long time for it to filter. It's like a woman's makeup. If you saw women's makeup and you kicked it up, it'd be all over, and it finally settles down, which is one season. During the monsoon season, then, when you're stuck for 3 months in nothing but rain, that stuff just turns into a quagmire. You've got big tow trucks that are pulling all pieces of equipment out of the mud, and they move them down to where they can get moving again. So that's, one of the things. We always had incoming coming in. So we would have rockets or mortars coming in. We were right next to the Phu-Bai airport, so we got a lot of airplanes coming and going, whether they were helicopters, fighter jets. The big bombers were coming in. I mean, you saw them coming from 5 miles away. It looks like a bird from far away, but when it gets to you, those things are massive, We had boxes in our hooches with a light in it, and we had 3 pair of boots. You had 1 pair of boots on. You had 1 pair of boots that was in the box getting dry, because overnight, I mean, your feet could wind up in terrible shape if they were in the humidity and the moisture in the water and walking in the mud all the time. And the 3rd pair was ready to be put on. I mean, you just rotated with your 3 pair of boots, forever. The countryside itself was beautiful. I mean, if you could imagine beautiful sunrises and sunsets, with the tropical vegetation there, it was beautiful. It's hard to believe that there was a war going on there. I mean, when you heard it, when you heard the shooting and everything, a couple of miles away, we were in a very, very secure area. We were in a well-protected area because we had the Phu-Bai airport there. Our generators were there. The 3rd Marine Division's headquarters was there. So any one of the other 2 places would be the first on Charlie's hit list. You give it 10 minutes, and you could check your watch and say, okay, they're going to hit over here, the airport first. They're going to hit the 3rd Marine Division next. They're going to come for our generators third. So you wait your 5 minutes, and you crawl down into your bunker, put your ear pads on, and sit there and wait. and they would finally come in, and you'd hear boom, 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 boom. They just periodically just try and aim for something, and after 10 minutes, it'd all be done, because they can't sit there and shoot at you for any length of time, because once we get a coordinate on them, Puff the Magic Dragon, which was one of our most deadly aircraft. There were 3 cannons in the side of the fuselage of the plane, and they could shoot like 6,000 rounds in about 2 minutes. Every 4th round was a tracer, which was like a red tracer bullet that shows them, like at nighttime, what they're hitting. You could practically walk down that line. It was so concentrated. People had to shovel the shells out of the guy that's shooting each one of the 3 of them. Once one of those came in, anything that was in its perimeter of what it was shooting was destroyed totally, So when we knew that the Puff the Magic Dragons, the C-130s, were coming in, we knew we had it made, because Charlie was the one now watching out for the American planes coming in. We were really aware of what was going on around us. We saw helicopters coming in. The sad part, coming in, we had the hospital just adjacent to us in one direction. You could tell by the way they were bringing either wounded or the dead off of the helicopters. If they were covered, or in body bags, they were gone. Sometimes if you saw an IV on the edge of this stretcher, and then they're heading in a different direction. We also fed power to all the walk-in refrigeration units, and that's where they kept the fellows who didn't make it. And it was so sad to just watch them coming in every day, and then they would have a huge C-130 that would come in, and if our refrigeration units were filled, they would have to come in, and they got everybody back out in the middle of the night. They didn't want us to see, it was bad enough knowing it was happening, when you talk about 58,000 men compared to our losses nowadays of what's going on with the virus, it's just a different way to die, The mirror part of it was on the backside. This is the full backside. This is what held it up, okay? This is a very similar piece of thing that penetrated this mirror. So you can see what this stuff can do as a rocket came through the roof of the hooch next to us. We were lucky. Everybody was in our bunker at the time when it hit. All we heard was a loud explosion, but we didn't know what it was until after the hit was over, But this is the damage that this stuff can come in, and these rockets are so loud. They're like a woman screaming as she's coming in. You could hear them coming in. The screaming itself just sends chills up your spine, So, and this is part of the tin roof, and some of the tin roof is embedded in here, and I took it back home with me, figuring better show somebody what was going on over here. It's not that easy to it's not a good environment to be living in, Even if you weren't on the front lines, it was just as dangerous for you as the fellow who's out in the field. Some of the guys had their foot lockers penetrated, where it went through the foot locker, went through books that they had and everything else that they had in their clothing, right through it and right through the floor, and went out in the crawl space under the hooch, So, with us being in the 3 sandbag deep bunkers, the bunkers absorbed anything that came close. It probably wouldn't have absorbed a direct hit, but it did absorb, most of the power from it. I also have here a punji stick. Okay, what they would do was Charlie is the enemy. Charlie is our ardent enemy. They would have pieces of plywood. They'd put it through the plywood, and it would catch on the plywood. They would put cow dung across the top of this. Okay, so if anybody, and they'd put it down into a hole in the ground. Anybody came through and they covered it. They disguised it. Okay, if you walked into it, you walked down on it, you penetrated the bottom of your boot. It didn't kill you, but it took you and like 2 or 3 other medics out of service, or where that you could be used somewhere else. So these weren't meant to kill, but they were used to maim and do some damage to your morale, knowing that these things are all around. They would have like 50, 100 of these in a space like this. It's like a pincushion, and the dung would just be like a poison after it's been, you can get a bad infection from that right away. We lost 2 of our Seabees after I was there for 4 months. We had a group of us that ran the generators. We had another group that put in the power poles. They strung the wires to all the different places that needed it. Okay, so these 2 gentlemen were on the power pole group where they put everything up. We had to coordinate with them all the time when they were putting in the power lines. What we had to do is by walkie-talkie, we had to shut down the grid so that they could tie it in safely. They'd be climbing up the poles. They'd be tying in our stuff to the poles that were going on, and it was kind of like they were out in the open. I mean, it was like they could have been a shooting duck, a moving target for anybody. I mean, once you're up in the poles. So after about 4 months, we got to know them very well because you had to work closely with them. Otherwise you didn't want them to get hurt on their job. They must have both gotten there at the same time. After 4 months of being up in Phu-Bai with us, we found out that their flight was going to be in 2 or 3 days. They had to hurry up and pack, catch a small flight from Phu-Bai to Da Nang to catch the big bird to go home. We threw a big party for them the night before. They were very appreciative. We wished them all the luck in the world and the rest of their life because we kind of figured that we weren't going to be seeing them anymore unless we, contacted their unit or something like that. So like 20, 25 of us comshawed, which means we borrowed some beer from from the officers, club, and they're wondering where'd that ration of beer go to? Well, the Seabees. We're known for that. We comshaw anything we can get our hands on, or we'll trade something that we can always get our hands on. So anyway, we wished them all the luck in the world. Last we saw them was about 9:30, 10 o'clock at night. They went to sleep. They caught an early flight the next morning. I'm saying like 2 o'clock in the morning, something like that. They got us together that next morning and says they've got some bad news. And we figured, well, what could be bad news? It was a rainy night that they were leaving. Their flight from Phu-Bai to Da Nang, they hit a mountain on the way home in a rainstorm, and everybody on board was killed. So, they spent 365 days in country, healthy. They were leaving to go home, and both of them lost their lives hours later, just a few hours. They says it was a mail run, and they says there was mail spread out all over the place with the plane, So we were really put out. I've showed this before. This was the death notices in the newspaper, the American newspaper. Okay, these are the 2 guys. It was John Gillen III from California and George Guy from Kalamazoo, Michigan. And I laminated that It was in the Stars and Stripes magazine, the military magazine. And I put this in my hat years and years ago. And whenever I wear my hat, those two guys are with me. I made this, the whole thing, okay. The only thing is I didn't color it in because I didn't have any colored crayons to play with. And I covered up just to be decent about it, you know. But the days start, okay, where did we start? I think we started at 200. And you're supposed to color each one, 199, 98, 97, 96, 95, and everything, getting them all the way down. And then once you fill it up, okay. When you're getting close to a week or 10 days, on your uniform, we would have chains, just a piece of chain. We would tie around the loop of our, the cover on our, the buttonhole, okay? And the chain would hang, and every day you'd just cut one more link. So you'd be going through chow hall, and you would see a guy. I mean, this was just letting the rest of the guys in your group know how short you're getting. You know, if your chain like this is, oh, he's still got a month or so. When your chain is only about an inch long, and you know that there's only 10 little balls left on that chain, and think, wow, he's got 10 days left to go or something like that. And you're cutting it down, you know. One of my buddies who I flew there with was stationed in Da Nang, 30 miles away from me. I got a note from him. It's, Bob, hurry up, get your stuff together. Your name is on the list down here in Da Nang. You're taking off with us in 2 days. So I had to get my commanding officer that I was with up there, and I says, I'm getting short. He says, oh, geez, you're supposed to let us know so we can replace you. I told him, I just found out yesterday. You know, I'm telling you as soon as I can. I got to be out of here, you know. So in about an hour's worth of time, it takes you to grab everything that you have, put it in your sea bag, and make sure that your name, rank, serial number, and everything is on the sea bag so it doesn't get lost on the trip on the way back home. We were on a helicopter from Da Nang, from Phu-Bai to Da Nang. We had a Braniff Airlines flight, okay? American pilots, co-pilots, flight attendants, stewardesses is what they called them at the time, you know, and we're looking at the girls and thinking, wow, whoa, wow, you know, that's something. The flight leaving Da Nang was just unbelievable. We take off, and all of a sudden we feel the pilot gun this, I mean, which is unusual for a commercial airline. You don't expect to feel pushed up against. He banks like this and out into the ocean. And I mean, it's all in the matter of 2 blocks. I mean, he was practically standing that aircraft on end. We found out later that they don't want to get hit by any of Charlie's having him shooting a plane as we're leaving. So you get up, you bank. I mean, we were like this. It was like a roller coaster ride, trying to figure out what's he doing, you know, but they had to do that every time. They had to get them out of the way, get us out of the way, and on our flight. And after about an hour, I looked around the flight and everybody is sleeping. I mean, it's such a sigh of relief that when you figure, hey, I'm in the air, we're gone, we never have to see that country again. When we landed in San Francisco and went to Treasure Island, which is right across the bridge, okay, to do our separation from the service, okay. We were signing out. We got whatever shots we still needed because you needed GG shots, gamma globin, for blood thinning, plus you have to get them again to bring your blood back to normal again. Out in front of the gate, there were garbage cans that lined up on each side of the gate. And I'm thinking, man, what are they doing all that? And I'm looking and I see green. Guys were getting out of the service, they were taking their sea bags and just throwing them in the garbage cans and walking away from that life. I knew that our population really was unhappy with us. Don't be unhappy with us. Our government sent us there. We didn't volunteer unless you're a lifer either in the Army, Navy, Marines, or Air Corps. Then you'd be going back and forth a couple of times. With me, they only needed me for 1 year there. You know, I had a year prepping for it, 1 year there, and got back home. The only thing that would make you stand out was your short haircut, you know, and I just let my hair grow to the normal length right away. At the airport, we're walking down the pathway, the tunnelway, and I see people, you know, waiting for everybody, you know. My mother, my brother, my aunt, my uncle, one of my cousins. I mean, they were besides themselves, you know. I was beside myself, you know, thinking, I mean, my mother wrote me every other day, just about every other day. Kept me up of what was going on all the time. She made 2 copies of a letter. If she had a 2-page letter, she would make copies of both. My brother, you don't believe this, my brother was in Saigon in the Army building the 12th Evacuation Hospital Unit while I'm in Da Nang, the other end of the country. Okay. Apparently, between services at the time, their computer systems, however early on they were, never, you've heard of the Sullivan Act, when the 5 Sullivan sailors were killed when their ship was sunk, and the United States says that there will never be another time when any brothers or a brother-sister combination will be in the same combat zone. She was so strong. She really was. I mean, she told us everything that was going on. Half the time, I'd be in a bunker writing her a letter telling her about what the weather was while we've got incoming. You know, I've got a flashlight stuck under here, you know, and I'm writing a little letter for her, you know, and never talking to her about what was going on. My brother did the same thing. We were both back at home. I mean, we overlapped by 3 months. He was there 9 months before I was there. I was there 3 months. We overlapped so like in 18 months is when the difference between when he started and when I finished, you know. And we started talking at breakfast one day, and she says, "Bob," she says, "you never told me that. Bill, you never told me about what happened then." She says, "I didn't think you guys were that involved with the Tet offensive." And I was winding up telling Bill, I says, "Boy," I says, and Bill was already gone by that time, you know, when Tet came through. It was when the North Vietnamese came in and they invaded every city, village, hamlet, and pounded the United States just did not know that it was coming. We had no idea, you know. We were right next to Highway number 1. We were actually cut off for about 3 or 4 days, you know. Our airport, the C-130s came in, they landed, they opened the hatch in the back, they pushed cartons and boxes and everything off the back while they're still rolling. They didn't stop. Pushed the stuff that we needed off the back and then took off at the other end because if Charlie got a hold of the coordinates to get them, they could have nailed them on the runways, you know. But so many things that Bill and I just never bothered telling her about what we saw, you know. We try to make it as clean as possible, you know. Now that they've done away with the draft, most of the people now coming into the service are volunteers. You know, they're getting into the service because they feel the need to serve their country. Okay, not everybody can do it, but what I think that if you see somebody who is a military person or is a veteran, please just respect what they've gone through for you to be able to live the life that you're living, you know, to appreciate it. I think the older people get, the more they understand what these service guys did for you, you know. it's not that we're asking for it. All we want to know is just that you appreciate what we've done, you know, and we hope that there are other younger people who are willing to do the same thing through, you know, peacetime or wartime, you know. And I tell you, you feel really good when I go through. I had my mask on the last time I went to the doctor's office, and one of the nurses walked by, and she looks at me and she says, "Oh, I recognize that." She says, "One of the girls that works here is a nurse. Her brother had that on. You know," she says, I know what that's from. You know, the Honor Flight Chicago." I says, "Yeah." She says, "Thank you for your service." You know, and that's all you need. You know, just an acknowledgement. You know, and the sad part is, you really know that there are going to be wars. I'm not going to say forever, but there's going to be bad times that we're going to be in, you know, some sort of a situation. You know, Vietnam was one of the longest wars, you know, they were sending advisors there in 64, 63 or 64, you know, and that's all we heard was Americans sending advisors. And I'm thinking, well, geez, and all of a sudden, okay, battalions of guys going there. And then where you practically have 700,000 men in country at the same time, you know. I can foresee that Honor Flight Chicago will be around for a long time. You know, it's a shame that they have to do that, you know, but I'm glad to be part of it. That's for sure, you know.